Hey, and welcome to Crunchy Stewardship. My name is Katie Fiola Jones.
And my name is Chrissy Rombach. We are two cousins who are passionate about learning and sharing knowledge to equip others to steward their spiritual, mental, emotional, financial, and physical health in order to honor God in every aspect of their lives.
In our podcast, we take deep dives into what it means to steward our lives as God originally intended for us with the resources that He has given us. We look at topics like food, medicine, finances, mental health, and lots more through a natural lens and with a biblical foundation.
Before we get into the gist of today's episode, we are going to do our random revelation segment. This segment is one that we share each week. One of us will share something that we learned this week about pretty much anything crunchy that doesn't necessarily have to be related to this episode. So, Katie, what was your random revelation this week?
Yeah, I'm actually, as you're asking that, I'm trying to pronounce it in my head. My random revelation is about ascorbic acid. Is that how you say it?
Ascorbic acid?
Yeah. Is that the word?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's Asorbic, right?
Ascorbic.
Oh.
So that's why I'm like, there's a C in there. It's like ascorbic, but I think the C's kind of silent. But anyway, I was like literally trying to pronounce it in my head right before I went on. So I'm like, Anyway, so ascorbic acid is an ingredient found in lots of different food products, as well as in like different products that need something like acidic to it. And it seems kind of harmless, except for that it depends on where it kind of like is derived from. So I'll read this fact that I copied and pasted here. So it is the most common form of supplemental vitamin C. It's produced industrially from glucose, often sourced from corn. Many of the popularity claims note that this corn is genetically modified, so like a GMO product, though vary depending on manufacturer and region. Most vitamin C products are made with genetically modified corn and harshly processed with chemicals like acetone. They begin with corn syrup, and it goes through a multiple step process which involves the acetone that you would find in nail polish. So the ascorbic acid, if it's like the natural form of it, it actually like comes from lemons or something like that. But it's like it's hard to collect in a natural form like that from lemons, or it's like an expensive thing, or it's hard to find. I don't know. So what they often do to make it cheaper and quicker is that they use like genetically modified corn and then process it through acetone in order to get it to this form to then use in tons of food products. Like anything that needs like a sour taste to it, or kind of has like an acidic-y kind of taste to it, typically has that in it. And the tricky part is that because it is still like the ascorbic acid or whatever, they don't distinguish between whether it's like where it's made from or where it's derived from. So you really don't know. So it's basically in most products that you would find, like any kind of processed food, whether it is heavily processed or just like a minimally processed food, if you see that ingredient, it's kind of like a red flag, because in most cases it comes from the not good form. So it comes from like the genetically modified corn. So it's another ingredient that I realized recently that you just got to kind of be careful of and aware of, because it likely comes from something that you don't really want to be eating. And yeah, it's rather unfortunate, because it's like another thing that when you Google it at first, it sounds like a totally fine product to be eating. But then when you find out that there's like a synthetic form of it, then that's when you know it's not that great. It's same thing like with vitamins, like the synthetic form of them is not as good for you as like the true form of the vitamin. So that's kind of what it comes down to. Yeah, kind of interesting.
That's the truth. Honestly, if there is any sort of ingredient that isn't a whole food in the product, I usually just don't eat it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I really try to stick with whole foods because at least I know what it's made of?
Yep.
Hopefully, they merely just chopped it off the plant and called it good. But no guarantees.
Yep.
At least it's more likely that that's the case.
Yeah, I've been finding so much lately that now the processing really matters because even oh my gosh, here's another one I'll throw at you guys, especially for the holiday seasons. Maybe you don't want to hear this. I found out that even if you're buying like organic chicken, it often or it likely has gone through the same chemical chlorine bath as like your non-organic chicken does. Just because of like if it comes from a very large processing company, hence like if you find it in your grocery store, it very likely went through that like chemical bath because of the way that they have to process multiple chickens at once. They go into these big like dunk baths. And so if one chicken has salmonella and they dunk it in the bath that doesn't have all the chemicals, then all the chickens are then contaminated with salmonella, which makes sense. So you're like, okay, you don't want to all of a sudden contaminate all the chickens, but then you're left with now eating chicken that has been dunked in these chemical baths. And so the best form of the chicken is to find like a pasture raised, an air chilled, like air frozen, like chicken versus like, when you like de-thaw chicken and like tons of liquid comes out of it and it's just like you have to put it on a plate or in a bowl and it's just like tons of the liquid comes out. Well, unfortunately, that is from like these chemical baths. And like I learned that and I'm like, I'm never going to look at eating any chicken the same. And we've like now switched to eating like getting chicken, like whole chicken from a local farmer, which is like the best that you can do, but it is more expensive. So we don't like do it as often. And so we do still like occasionally go get like chicken from the grocery store, but organic is definitely better than the non-organic, but it likely still has all the chemicals in it. So you're like, great, cool. Ugh, it's dumb.
You know what? Something that I have found a lot of encouragement in lately is this is a process. We've
Mm-hmm.
talked about it before that you're not going to be perfect. And in the end, God is powerful enough to protect us from these horrible ingredients and chemicals that are put in our food. And we can make an effort as stewards of the resources that He's given us to eat as best we can, to nourish our bodies as best we can. And in the end, though, if we eat something that's not good for us or on accident, even,
Mm-hmm.
we serve a God who is powerful to protect us, and He can and He will. We just have to believe that. And so I've been finding a lot of peace in that. It really helps with the anxiety that really comes over you when you find out, like, oh my gosh, I can't eat anything. Just taking a step back and remembering, like, no, I serve a God who's powerful to protect me from all of these chemicals, which ultimately are the result of sin and in our
Mm-hmm.
world, if you really trace it back. And so, you know, that's just one place I find a lot of comfort when I start to get overwhelmed with all of the new things that I hear about. Oh, I thought I was doing it so good, but then I found out this new fact, and all of a sudden, this entire food group is contaminated and I can never eat it again. It's like, no, you can. It's everything in moderation, and well, not everything in moderation. Don't eat Chick-fil-A in moderation.
Mm-hmm.
But, um it living in America, it's not really all that possible to be perfect with your food.
Mm-hmm.
No matter where you are, really. It's not possible to be perfect with your food. And so don't hold yourself to a standard of perfection that you're not going to reach, because ultimately it's just chasing after the wind. And
Yeah.
so it's much easier
Yeah.
personally to just rest in the truth that God saves and God protects, and I get to eat the food that makes my tummy happy. So
Yeah. Yeah. It
there's my 2 cents
is.
today.
It is very much a balance because I've definitely heard people use that argument to explain why they're not even like trying to be healthier or try to make any lifestyle changes. And you can fall into the trap both ways because if you make all of this crunchy living and healthy living, non toxic living, and idle, then the stress is going to devour you just as much as the bad lifestyle choices.
That makes me think I was reading in Romans today. I think it's Romans 6 when Paul is talking to the Romans and he says, "Does this mean that you should go on sinning?" He says, "By no
Mm,
means. Absolutely not." Like, yes, we serve a God that saves, but nonetheless, we are still to walk in his will and in his way. And he tells us to cast our anxieties on him. He tells us, do not fear. And so ultimately, when fear and anxiety are taking over, that is sinful. It is turning our eyes away from God, and we are idolizing the food and the fear and the anxiety around it. And so, yes, it is okay if you accidentally eat something bad, but don't take that as oh, I don't have to do anything because that still is sinful. Paul says, by no means should you continue going in your ways, turn from it. And, filling our bodies with the resources and the nutrients that God has given us rather than the ones that we've manufactured on our own, I believe is a way to serve the Lord wholeheartedly.
that's good. It's good. The approach that we have taken is we've, I've, learned this information. I'm going to do the best with it as I can. And so we try to make most of our choices based around a lot of the knowledge that I've learned with healthy living and non-toxic living and stuff. So we've switched a lot of our household products and we've switched a lot of the way that we eat. But then obviously, I mean, you go to someone's house and they're feeding you all processed things. And I
Folgers
always
coffee.
Oh, Folgers coffee. Yes, Folgers coffee. So silly. I I have becoming slightly more of a Karen when it comes to a lot of those things. There's a group of women that we go to this coffee shop every few weeks, and I have been known to just show up with my own coffee because I'm just like, I I also am like I'm in the mindset right now too of like I really like coffee the way that I like it. So why would I spend money on coffee that I know I'm like not really going to like that much? And I know that sounds like really petty, but I'm just like I'm not going to go spend $5 on coffee that I'm like, nah. So I'm just like enjoying my own coffee that I've brought in my own mug and I definitely feel like I'm going to get kicked out one time, but nobody's ever said anything. Not even my friends. They've never said anything to me.
You know what you could do is you could get a tea. If
Mm,
they have loose leaf tea at the coffee shop, you could get that instead of the coffee. Then you're still giving the coffee shop the business, but you're not getting coffee that you won't enjoy.
yep. Yeah, and it likely is cheaper too. Well, it kind of depends.
Mhm.
Sometimes the loose leaf tea is cheaper, and then sometimes just a plain black cup of coffee is cheaper. That's just kind of like, yeah.
That's
But
true.
I mean, like we did really well. We went to a birthday party, like a little kid's birthday party, just a few days ago, and we the only snacks that we ate there, they of course had like tons of cookies and chips and things like that. We only ate the grapes and didn't have any cake. And both of us were like, we like were high fiving each other when we got back in the car. We're like, yeah, we're awesome. We didn't eat any of the processed stuff and the heavily sugared cake.
I love that. That's so great. Well, anyways, let's transition to the actual topic for today's episode. Since today is going to be the last episode of the year of 2025, we want to leave you guys with a few resources that you can use to continue your research and continue your journey over the winter break. That way, when we come back on in January, you will have learned a little bit and you will have caught up with us, maybe, maybe not. I don't know. You might have surpassed us, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so we just wanted to give you guys a few resources that you can continue listening to things and reading things over Christmas while we are not going to be publishing any episodes. So we're kind of going to split it up in a few different sections. We're going to start by talking about a few podcasts, then we'll look at books that we would recommend, and then we'll transition to websites. So, Katie, you want to kick us off with the podcast that we recommend?
Yeah, I will share with you two that I've kind of been listening to the most recently. The first one is Modern Ancestral Mamas. I know that I've mentioned them a couple times on our episodes here and there. I like them because I feel like they have a very similar style to our podcast, where it's like two friends who just kind of chit chat about certain topics. They're very passionate, very knowledgeable. It's really great because it's just really casual, and I really like that sometimes as a trade-off for other shows that I listen to that are more like well produced, like shows and productions where they have the videos and all this stuff. Actually, now that I think about it, I think Modern Ancestral Mamas might do video too, but it's nothing like the fancy productions of big shows or anything like that. So it's just very casual, and they cover a lot of really good topics. They also talk about like homeschooling, and obviously since it's Modern Ancestral Mamas, they talk a lot about like motherhood too, and different things. So I just really enjoyed that and have gotten a lot out of their episodes. And then another one that I have been enjoying a lot is Wise Traditions with Hilda Gore. And that one is kind of a part of the Weston A. Price Foundation, which is known for kind of talking about making things with whole foods and kind of cooking from scratch. And they are very much all about kind of that natural life. Hilda herself is a person of faith as well, which is sweet, but a lot of her podcast episodes they're not really like about being a Christian, but it's kind of cool that she talks about that every now and then. But the episodes, or like the show itself, I don't listen to all of them. There's so many episodes. They have so many episodes. It's like over 500 something at this point. I usually go and scroll and find a topic that I'm really curious about listening to, because they've definitely had some very like out there strange things on the podcast before where I'm like, what am I listening to right now? And even the one that I actually am in the process of listening at this moment is like kind of borderline like woo woo, but I'm also like, it's interesting because the guy who's talking, I don't think is a Christian, but a lot of the things that he's describing is like stuff that we believe as Christians, like prayer can actually heal people, like prayer can actually make an impact on life. And so what he's talking about is like your thoughts and your like kind of almost like the idea of manifestation, but he hasn't used that word, but it's like kind of like your thought process and what you believe and what you think about something can really impact like your health and whether or not you're going to heal and all this stuff. And then Hilda actually mentioned in her podcast, she's like, yeah, like I'm a person of faith, and we really do believe like prayer and the Holy Spirit actually move and create these miracles and stuff. So anyway, pick and choose what you want. But they do have a lot of just really good wise tips. I also just like her. She's just really cute and sweet, and really, she's like an older lady too. She's probably like in her 60s maybe.
Is she really? Her voice sounds like she's probably 30.
Yeah, she like sounds young.
I picture when she talks, I picture like a very dainty, petite, blonde woman, maybe in her 30s, with a high ponytail.
Yep,
and a scrunchie.
She's got gray hair, and she's like just loves life and so positive. And I also just like she has like a really cute smile. I found her on Instagram because I honestly didn't know anything about this woman when I started listening to the podcast, and I was just kind of shocked. Like I was like, I just didn't expect that, especially in like the podcasting world. I feel like people are usually just younger, so it was kind of interesting seeing people who are more like my parents' age and stuff, where I'm like, that's kind of cool. And she's just loving life and sharing all the good stuff. So yeah.
That's great. Another podcast I would recommend is Culture Apothecary by Alex Clark. We have mentioned her a few times on here, but she interviews a lot of really great speakers. And I have to tell you, I have learned so much from her. At the same time, though, I do have to actually be careful when I'm listening to her episodes because she is so intense sometimes. I feel like I can get very riled up and like overly emotional about some of these topics, which is not beneficial for my health. And so, for me personally, I have to listen to her stuff with care, and I have to be aware of my mental state when I am listening to her stuff. But at the same time, she does interview some people who have some really great insight into what is going on in the health world and also politically. She does lean conservative, and so it's nice to kind of hear multiple different perspectives, even people who don't always agree with her on her views.
I wanted to throw in one more podcast that I didn't originally write down, but I was thinking about because I do actually still really appreciate it, and we talk about him a lot. But it's Josh Axe's podcast, AXE. He's also really great because he is a Christian.
I love him.
Yeah, he is so good, and we'll mention a couple more of his resources too, and when we talk about books, but they he does a really good job. It's a show primarily with himself, but then he brings on guests occasionally, and he's so knowledgeable and has a really good understanding of so many things, but he is always like you're guaranteed that every podcast he will come back and talk about God. And I really appreciate that because sometimes on other shows I'm like, oh, they're Christians, but they don't always bring in like how like Christian living can be incorporated into this, or how like this can be incorporated into Christian living, or it's just kind of like a side thought. So I really appreciate that of his, as well as just in any of his resources that he creates. The one thing sometimes though with him is that he talks really fast, and I often listen to my podcasts on a faster speed, but his, I have to listen to it a little slower because he gets really excited and he just talks really fast, and kind of like, it's funny because he's got this like stutter where he'll be like, and he'll like kind of like say, because he's just going so fast, and it's like him processing his thoughts, and it kind of just makes me laugh at this point because he does it so much.
Honestly, Josh Axe is one of those people that I look at him, I'm like, I want to be like you one day.
Yes.
Like when I grow up, I would love to have a brain like yours.
Mm-hmm.
It's so sharp. Okay, so moving on. We're going to move on to books. A few books that I would personally recommend is, again, by Josh Axe. He wrote a book called Eat Dirt. That book I read when I started this whole crunchy journey, and it talks a lot about healing your gut, leaky gut syndrome, things like that. Another one by Josh Axe that I would love to get, but I don't have, is called Ancient Prescriptions. It is pretty much like a recipe book with a lot of home remedies and things like that that you can use as medicinal substitutions. Instead of using medicine from the pharmacy or something like that, you would use these remedies to essentially do the same thing. Another book that has a lot of recipes in it is The Forgotten Home Apothecary. I really do love this one. It has a lot of really fun pictures, and when you're looking at the table of contents, it's like you're picking a jar off the shelf of whatever remedy you want to use. And so I've used it a few times. I've made a few successful recipes and a few unsuccessful recipes. There's some of them definitely require trial and error, but
Interesting.
they do work in the end. Yeah, the Jello cough drops, I have not quite figured out how to get it to like become Jello. It doesn't solidify for me. And I might be doing it wrong. I don't know.
I wonder.
But I haven't had a cough in a while, so I haven't had a need to make it.
Yeah, I wonder if you could like YouTube it and see if people have like shown their process just to see, because sometimes that's like really helpful for me where I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And then I'll just go on YouTube and type in that thing, and then someone's like, oh, and just be
That's a good
sure
idea.
to, only use a metal bowl, or, something like that, where you're like, that is so weird and specific. But then all of a sudden you're like, oh, now this actually really works, or something,
Now it
temperature or
works.
whatever. I don't know. So I
Interesting.
don't know.
All right, well, maybe I'll have to do that to figure out why my Jello won't Jelloize.
Yep. Well, a couple books that I want to recommend. The first one is my first book that really tipped me over the edge into crunchiness, and just better eating in general, was called Feeding You Lies by Vani Hari. I've mentioned it also a couple times throughout our podcast episodes. This one really will open your eyes to the corruption inside of our big food system. And it goes beyond just food, because there are so many different industries that touch the food industry that there's just a lot of corruption and just a lot of stuff going on that I just wasn't aware of. You think an apple's an apple until you figure out all the things that went into producing that apple and what's sprayed on it and what's really going into your body, and then the impact that it has. And we're wondering, why is everyone so sick, or why am I getting sick, or why am I not, losing weight even if I'm eating really healthy? Well, it's probably because of the way that things, again, are processed and made, and just all the stuff that really goes into it. So, Vani Hari is like an advocate for just better food ingredients in general. And that was the first book that I really read, and was kind of like, it opened my eyes to the whole like Maha movement in general, because she's a big name in the Maha movement of, Make America Healthy Again. And that was the first time I had ever heard her name. Health and food and nutrition and stuff has always been something I've been generally interested in. I wouldn't say passionate about, something that I'm like always conscious of. But that book was really pivotal in helping me understand, like, oh, I don't know anything really about it. And she just kind of flips the whole food pyramid on its head, and you're like, oh, all this is just a marketing scheme. My other book is a new one that actually just came out like a month or two ago now. It actually might have only just been last month. But Josh.
It was September 16th.
Oh, there you go. So September. So it's been 2 months. I must have only just read it last month then. But the Biblio Diet is co-authored by Josh Axe, but then Jordan Rubin is kind of the primary author. And actually, if you listen to the audio version, he actually reads the book in the audio version. But this book is now going to be my go-to book when I find out somebody has a chronic illness, especially something like cancer. This is the one that I'm going to be recommending to people, because they go into a lot of information on how to prevent and reverse cancers, and then just stay cancer free forever at that point. I actually did learn that my mom recommended it to one of her friends who she learned has cancer recently, which I was like, way to go, Mom, that you did that. Because she actually went and listened to the book, because we share an Audible account. She's like, this is amazing, and I'm going to recommend it to my friend, and it's going to change her life. And I was like, yeah. They have a lot of really interesting information in there. So yeah, that one's the Biblio. So Biblio. And actually, Biblio technically stands for book, like the book diet is what they go by. But obviously the book, meaning the Bible, is kind of what they're playing on there. So that one is good. And then I'll just throw this one out there right now, and then you can share another one, Chrissy. But Nourishing Traditions, I mention it like all the time, so I don't even need to really go into it that much. But it's helps you kind of take what Vani Hari said in her book and then start to implement a lot of what she said, of like, all this stuff is not good. And then Nourishing Traditions gives you even more in depth the science behind why a lot of this other stuff that she was saying is bad. And then it also gives you recipes, all in one book. And the book literally looks like a giant textbook. And that is basically how I've been treating it. It's like a textbook, and I love it. I highlight so much in there. There is just so much information in there, and it is so good, and there's a lot of really good recipes. So I highly recommend that. Do you have any other books you want to share? And then I'll share a couple more.
Yeah, so the last two that I have, I actually have not read these two, so take that as you may, but they've been recommended to me numerous times over. And these two books talk about the mind-body connection and how our mental health and our mental state impact our physical health and physical state so incredibly much. And so the two books are Mind Your Body by Nicole Sachs, and that one specifically talks a lot about chronic pain and how to treat and heal chronic pain and even sometimes acute pain with mental exercises. And so I actually have a friend who read this book. She's a counselor. She read this book, and then she had a abdominal surgery. She had a tumor in her abdomen, had it removed, and she was sent home with not enough pain medication to get her to her next appointment. And so she was in excruciating pain, and she had 48 hours until her next appointment, and she had one pill left of oxycodone or Dilaudid, whichever that she took. And she went to this book. She did the exercise that, like the mental exercise that this book talks about, and she said her pain vanished. It was gone completely. She did not have to take that last pill that she had left in the bottle, and she made it to her appointment 48 hours, no problem, and she walked in feeling fantastic. So just the power of the mind over the physical is quite fantastic.
It actually reminds me a lot about the concept of hypnobirthing. There's a lot of books on that subject, but it's kind of that same mentality of like when you do these mind exercises, you can get through anything like birth without needing any pain medications or anything like that. And so if anybody's wanting to learn about that, I've read a few different books about hypnobirthing myself, and it's really quite fascinating. So there you go. There's another recommendation that I didn't expect to give.
I love it. Then the other book that's similar is called Good Energy by Casey Means. It again talks about the energy and in our bodies and our mental health and mental state, things like that, and how it impacts our physical health. So I think that's quite a fascinating connection because in the end, it's all connected.
Yeah, I really want to read that book. That one is actually high on my want to read list right now. So maybe I'll add that to my reading list over the kind of like Christmas holiday time. On the thought of your thoughts and your feelings and stuff, the next book I actually wanted to recommend was one that I read most recently, and it's called Bad Therapy. This one, I don't know if it's necessarily, I would consider it super crunchy, but it's definitely in the realm of like health, especially when it comes to mental health. And this book has really challenged the way that I think about therapy and raising kids and our society as a whole right now. And it's heavy emphasis on feelings and therapy and mental health in general. And it's really fascinating because, I mean, I think most of us have kind of come to this place where we're like, therapy is really good and only good things can come from it. And so a lot of parents are really quick to send their kids to therapy and to get therapy, but oftentimes it inevitably leads to kids not being able to become really resilient and to kind of grow up and to make decisions for themselves and to do things scared and do things messy. I was blown away because it challenged so many of the things that I had thought I believed, but then the way that they explain it in this book is really like, oh my gosh, it challenged a lot of the books that I have read in the past about trauma and mental health and therapy in general. And then the last book that I want to share for those who maybe want to get deeper into the crunchy world and are really curious about it, is the book called Turtles All the Way Down. Now, it's by Anonymous, but it's by an anonymous two authors for a reason. It's all about the vaccine industry and vaccine safety and efficacy and lots of stuff. It's written by anonymous because anytime that anybody, no matter who they are, when anyone speaks out against vaccines in any way, shape, or form, that person oftentimes becomes attacked. And, oh, they don't know what they're talking about because they're crazy, or they don't have a degree, or they live in another country, or, anything. It's basically oh no, you can't take their book seriously because this person you cannot take seriously in general. But really what this book does is simply take all of the research and studies, and it just compiles it into one book, and it breaks it down into what is the safety and efficacy of all vaccines. So it'll go through and talk about all of them. And it even talks about the polio vaccine in a way that I had never learned about. There's a lot of crazy stuff about the polio vaccine that I was just like, whoa. Anyway, it's a really hefty book. There's a lot of information. And my mom started listening to that book too. And she's like, there's just too much in here. I get the picture. I'm done with this. So just be fair warned. It's intense. There's a lot to take in. So yeah. Anyway, let's move on to any other websites or resources that we recommend. That way people can also have different places to go to learn things. Chrissy, do you want to kick us off in that section?
Yeah, so the first one that I would recommend is actually a website that my functional medicine doctor refers to a lot. He hasn't technically referred this website, but in their weekly emails that they send out, there are always recipes from this website. It's called The Minimalist Baker. You could literally just Google Minimalist Baker and it will come up. And the really nice thing about it is you can choose a bunch of different kinds of recipes that you want and kind of filter through, because this website, I'm not even kidding you, has 4,000 recipes on it. So you can filter it by season, first off. Then you can filter any certain diet that you want to focus on. If you want high protein, gluten-free, dairy-free, if you want it sweetened with dates instead of sugar, something like that. They don't have a sugar-free option, but they have date sweetened, which I think is pretty as close to sugar-free as you can get. So lots of options in terms of specialty diets. You can also filter it in terms of what kind of cuisine you're looking for: Asian, Indian, Italian, Caribbean, and any type of recipe. So if you want an appetizer or a beverage or a dip or a dinner or something like that. And then also in terms of simplicity, ingredients, and then you could even sort them A to Z. But there's so many different recipes on here. All of the ones that I've tried have been fantastic so far. I am loving all of them, and they all make my tummy very happy, and my body's very happy with them. They're very easy recipes to follow. So I highly recommend the Minimalist Baker website to find holiday recipes even. They have healthy versions of pecan pie and a pumpkin cream parfait, and it just is delicious and isn't going to wreck your gut. So it's a beautiful thing. Another website that I would recommend is the EWG website. Is short for the Environmental Working Group. So this group does they do a lot of third-party research on products, and then they give those products a rating based on how good they are. And usually they do a lot of products that aren't foods, so to say. They do a lot of personal care products and water. They do have a water section, things like that. And so it's really nice because they break down each ingredient and why it's important and why you should be concerned about it or not concerned about it. And then it also breaks down a harm level, so into allergies, cancer causing, toxicity, things like that. And so it'll break down what exactly this ingredient is harming in your body, which is Also very helpful because if you don't have an allergy to an ingredient, then it can be okay for you. But if you do have an allergy to an ingredient, then it's nice because it highlights it super bold, so you can stay away from that. Another one that I would recommend is the Bobby Approved app. This is, if you look it up on a website, it'll just send you straight to the app. So just get the app. It's really nice. Bobby is Bobby Parrish. He is another third-party guy who goes through and pretty much highlights good and bad food in grocery stores. He literally goes through grocery stores throughout the entire United States and takes pictures of products and posts them on his app. And you can search through. He has an entire list of ingredients that are color-coded red, yellow, and green on how good or bad an ingredient is. And he explains to you why you should or shouldn't stay away from certain ingredients and things like that. The nice thing about Bobby that I think is he focuses a lot on ingredient quality, and he doesn't really focus much on like macronutrient ratios. So an app like the Yucca app focuses a lot more on macronutrient ratios, like protein versus carbs versus fats, whereas Bobby Approved focuses a lot more on just the core ingredients. And let me tell you guys, if you're getting the core ingredients good, then you really don't have to worry as much about the carbs to protein to fat ratio, because the ingredients are what's really going to make or break your health here.
Yeah, I agree. I've heard some not great things about the Yucca app, especially that they like oftentimes promote foods that often have seed oils. I'm on like another app that I've tried before, but I'm also on their like email list is Seed Oil Scout. SOS is what they're like app says, like SOS. They actually send out a lot of really good, helpful emails. I've really appreciated. So if you're looking for like an email list to join, theirs is really awesome. So the kind of two-ish resources, extra ones that I wanted to recommend first were just simply Facebook groups. I have learned a lot inside of different health-focused Facebook groups. There are Facebook groups for a lot of these like podcasts in general. Alex Clark has one that is pretty good. They actually have like a specific one that's more for crunchy stuff. It's Crunchy and Cute Servative, because her original group is called Cute Servatives with a like cute, CUTE is what I'm saying, just in case you can't understand me. Cute Servatives. But then there's like variations and breakoffs of her main group, and people are very active in those groups. One group actually that I've been enjoying and have been more active in is a homeopathy group, which is not something I really expected, but I've been kind of getting a little bit more into homeopathy. And there's like a group that I'm a part of. I think it's called like Ask a Homeopath 24/7 or something like that. If you type it in, like there's different variations of this group. And I really like it because you literally could go in there and they have like an active homeopath who, like a homeopathic doctor in there who will listen to what you have to say. Like you type in all of your symptoms and different things, and then they'll recommend a homeopathic remedy. And they're usually really quick and responsive. And so we've been doing that recently. And I've been kind of building up my collection of homeopathic remedies, mostly because it really helped Malachi when he had a little sickness a couple weeks ago. And I was like shocked. And so I'm like, now what else can I like do with this homeopathic remedy? So I've been posting in those, and that's been really helpful. But even if you like look up like crunchy and then put in your state, like I joined a Michigan crunchy group, and people often in there will ask for doctor recommendations or chiropractor recommendations, or will post things about different like bills that are being proposed in their state that are related to health or agriculture and stuff like that. And I've just been like keeping an eye on those, and that's been really helpful. So I'd recommend that. But especially too, if you are looking to get more like engaged and involved in a lot of the just like movement of crunchiness and maha specifically, There's a website that I've been kind of keeping an eye on too. It's called mahaaction.com. And they have a lot of resources on like how you can actually be involved in making America like healthier. Actually, I've been going through some of their resources and learning from them, and I'm on their email list, and they send like updates on like the wins, like Maha wins of the week. And it's just really encouraging too when you get to see some of those wins and you're like, wow, like things are actually changing and they're making improvements and it's great. And so, yeah, that's kind of the last resource that I wanted to recommend. Chrissy, did you have any other things you wanted to share or say?
No, that's great. I had never heard of literally all three of those, so I'm over here typing
Ooh.
all of them into my browser to see if I can join these email lists and
Mhm.
learn more because, we're both constantly learning from each other. And so, yeah, it's good to bounce ideas off of each other because I learn things you're learning things I'm not learning. And so it's great to come together and be like, wow, there's so much more.
Well, this episode hopefully has been helpful so that way you can have some resources to continue your crunchy education. If you ever come across like a good book or podcast or resource in general, we would love to hear about them. We also do have a Facebook group. You notice I did not mention it as like a resource to come and join because we haven't been super active over there. But it is still a resource that you can come and join. We do part of our like goal over the Christmas kind of season when we're taking a break from posting episodes is to just start to revision like what is this podcast going to look like in the next season, in the next year, and what do we want to see change, what do we think we're doing well. We would love to hear from you on some of those thoughts too. Like if you have an idea or something that we could be doing differently on the podcast, we'd love to hear from you. So just shoot us an email or join us over on our Facebook group, Crunchy Christian Mamas on a Budget. We have a lot of ideas on what we can be doing differently, but at the same time, it's like we don't want to just go and do different things like all crazy. So if there's stuff that's working that you really like, we also don't want to get rid of that stuff. So, but our goal is really to have a plan for the next year in what we're going to be doing and different things that we can be providing for you and to just better serve you in this journey that we're all on to better our health and to become closer to Christ and to just take care of our families well and also take care of our finances well. So that's what we're going to be doing over the Christmas season. We'll be planning episodes and preparing those for you for the new year. Chrissy, any other thoughts that you want to share before we sign off?
No, I think you hit it all.
Cool.
Without further ado, my name is Chrissy.
My name is Katie.
And thanks for listening to Crunchy Stewardship.
See you next year.
Bye.